Something strange happened in the last decade. Something no one predicted, yet everyone now feels. Social media didn't just change communication. It exposed humanity. And more specifically, it exposed women in a way no generation before them has ever been exposed. Because for the first time in history, there's no filter between emotion and publication. Every thought, every impulse, every wound, instantly broadcast to millions. Every time a woman opens her phone and records a truth-telling video, she's unknowingly lifting the curtain on the modern female psyche. And what we're seeing isn't what people expected. At first, it looked like empowerment, women speaking openly about their experiences, their desires, their boundaries. But look closer, watch long enough, and you'll notice something darker underneath the self-love quotes and soft girl affirmations. Behind the filters and the healing era, captions lies exhaustion, resentment, and emotional chaos. Because when the mask slips, what we find is not confidence. It's confusion. Not power, but pain dressed as power. The platforms became confession booths, and they're confessing everything. Scroll through TikTok and you'll find women proudly admitting things that once would have ended reputations. Cheating stories framed as empowerment, manipulation repackaged as feminine energy, emotional volatility celebrated as authenticity. They believe they're owning their truth. But what they're actually doing is documenting decline in real time with filters and background music. They say, if he can't handle my trauma, he doesn't deserve me. They say, I'm too much for weak men. But listen closer, and you'll hear what they're really saying. I'm broken, and I need someone else to make it make sense. This is the new honesty, raw, unfiltered, and revealing in ways no psychology textbook could ever describe. For centuries, women could hide behind reputation, behind the private walls of social expectation. But the internet erased privacy. It replaced quiet self-reflection with constant performance. Every post became a mirror, and in trying to project perfection, they accidentally revealed imperfection in its most unguarded form. You can read it in the captions. The subtle bitterness disguised as strength, the envy veiled as self-care, the validation addiction masquerading as independence. The entire landscape of online femininity has become a paradox. Women preaching self-worth while measuring it in likes. It's not that all women are villains in this story. It's that many are narrating their own downfall without realizing it. When you see a woman declare, I'm done being nice, what she's really saying is, kindness didn't protect me, so now I lead with armor. When she says, I don't need a man, what she often means is, I've been hurt too deeply to trust one again. When she posts about healing her inner child, she's telling you, without meaning to, that she still hasn't grown out of the pain that raised her. This is the irony of our time. In their quest to control the narrative, women lost control of the message. Because every truth-telling video, every bitter rant, every confession is another piece of evidence. Not against them, but against the illusion they tried to maintain. They no longer have to be exposed by others. They're exposing themselves beautifully, tragically, publicly. And men are watching, quietly, patiently, with a kind of dawning realization that changes everything. Because once you see behind the mask, once you witness the patterns repeated in video after video, you can't unsee it. You start noticing the same tone, the same justifications, the same emotional debt spilling into the public sphere. The performance is collapsing. And underneath it, for the first time in centuries, stands something unfiltered. The raw, unedited nature of the modern woman. Not the idealized goddess, not the perfect victim, but a human being tangled in contradictions, expectations, and unhealed wounds. The world thought social media would empower women. Instead, it illuminated them. Every light, every shadow, every crack in the facade. This is not hatred. This is observation. The age of mystery is over. The masks are gone. And what remains is the truth. There's a new kind of economy in modern relationships, one that doesn't deal in money, but in wounds. It's called emotional debt. Every heartbreak, every betrayal, every toxic situationship gets stored like unpaid credit. And instead of paying it off with self-reflection, many women now carry it forward. expecting the next man to refinance it. You see it everywhere now. The woman who says, "I just need a man who can handle me." The woman who declares, "My trauma made me stronger." But behind the slogans lies a simple truth. Her trauma didn't make her stronger. It made her tired, suspicious, reactive, and somewhere deep inside, she's waiting for someone else to clean up the mess she doesn't want to face. I once met a man who said, "Every woman I date eventually starts treating me like her ex." He wasn't exaggerating. It started small, a look when he was 5 minutes late. Then the passive-aggressive silence because he didn't text enough. Eventually, every disagreement turned into, "You're just like the others." She wasn't arguing with him. She was arguing with ghosts. Ghosts of men who hurt her, ignored her, left her. And without realizing it, she made him pay for every single one of them. That's emotional debt, trauma that was never processed, just transferred. The modern dating culture feeds this cycle like oxygen feeds fire. Casual sex promised liberation, but what it really delivered was detachment. Every short-lived fling, every unreciprocated connection, every healing era left a scar that didn't heal. It calcified. Now, many women walk into relationships emotionally maxed out. Not because they're evil, but because they've spent years mistaking attention for intimacy and validation for love. Each experience left them emptier, but instead of rebuilding, they rebranded emptiness as empowerment. It's not healing, it's debt collection. They say, "He needs to earn my trust." But what they mean is, "He needs to pay for someone else breaking it." They say, "I won't settle this time." But what they mean is, "Someone else made me feel small, so now I'll overcompensate by demanding the impossible." And here's the cruel irony. The men they now meet are often the ones who least deserve the punishment. The good man, the patient man, the one who actually wants to build something real. But to her, he's not a partner, he's an emotional janitor. His love isn't love, it's labor. Every reassurance, every gesture, every kind word is him paying installments on a debt he didn't create. Social media has made it worse. Instead of seeking help, many women seek sympathy and likes. They broadcast pain as identity. Every breakup becomes a video. Every meltdown becomes a post. Every insecurity becomes content. And the audience rewards it. Because in a world addicted to drama, victimhood sells. The more she suffers, the more engagement she gets. The more chaos she admits, the more people applaud her vulnerability. It's the perfect storm. Emotional wounds turned into public currency. But here's what nobody talks about. When pain becomes profitable, healing becomes optional. Why would anyone truly move on when the world keeps rewarding their heartbreak? Why would anyone look inward when validation comes faster from confession than from change? It's not just a cultural shift, it's a psychological one. The modern woman has learned to brand her damage, to market her trauma. She calls it self-awareness. But awareness without accountability is just decoration. You can see it in how they talk about relationships. "I'm healing." Translation: "I'm avoiding responsibility. I'm protecting my peace." Translation: "I'm emotionally unavailable but want sympathy for it. I'm not ready for something serious right now." Translation: "I'm still recovering from men I chose and blame for my own decisions." The result? A generation of women emotionally exhausted, spiritually bankrupt, but still convinced they deserve premium love after spending years investing in chaos. And when they finally meet a man who offers peace, they can't stand it. It's too calm, too still, too real, because peace feels unfamiliar. They'll say, "I just don't feel the spark." But what they mean is, "I don't feel the dysfunction I'm addicted to." And so, the cycle continues. Another breakup, another confession, another TikTok about how men can't handle real women. No, it's not that men can't handle them. It's that men are done paying off emotional credit cards that were maxed out long before they arrived. This is the age of emotional debt, and men are finally learning to stop cosigning. It started slowly, like a quiet cultural tremor that most people ignored. Men stopped clapping, stopped validating, stopped playing along with the script. And that silence, that absence of male approval, shook the entire system. For decades, women were told that self-expression was liberation. They could say whatever they wanted, do whatever they wanted, post whatever they wanted, and society would applaud them for being real. But what happens when the applause fades? When the attention they once weaponized no longer translates into love, commitment, or respect? That's where we are now. The mask of empowerment has begun to crumble under the weight of its own contradictions. Because you can only preach, "I don't need a man," for so long before you realize you still crave connection. You can only post about healing energy for so long before you realize no one is actually healing. You can only perform strength for so long before you realize you're exhausted from pretending. Men have changed, not into monsters or misogynists, but into observers. Silent auditors of human behavior. They scroll, they watch, they read the comments, and they understand something no one dared to say out loud. The performance is no longer fooling anyone. When a woman posts a thirst trap but calls it self-confidence, he sees insecurity. When she says, "I'm not like other girls," he hears the echo of 1,000 others who said the same. When she says, "Men are intimidated by strong women," he understands she's not strong, she's defensive. The illusion that men are still gullible enough to chase validation instead of authenticity, that illusion is dead. Social media didn't empower women. It revealed them, and in revealing them, it also awakened men. Now, men can see the patterns that used to be hidden behind charm. They can detect the emotional manipulation, the subtle guilt-tripping, the endless testing, the constant need to prove worth. They recognize the signs of emotional bankruptcy disguised as independence. They can smell entitlement before it even speaks. And once a man sees it, truly sees it, he can't go back. That's the moment the performance collapses. Because performance only works when the audience believes it's real. Now, the audience is awake. Men are realizing that they don't need to audition for love. They don't need to earn validation by overgiving. They don't need to fix someone else's emotional wreckage to prove they're good men. The new man doesn't chase chaos, he studies it. He watches the cycle play out in real time. The same women who said, "I'm focusing on me," come back a year later saying, "Where have all the good men gone?" The same ones who mocked traditional relationships now cry about loneliness. The same ones who boasted about having options now complain that no one wants to commit. The irony is poetic. They're haunted by the ghosts of their own choices. The illusion was built on borrowed time. Validation was never meant to replace intimacy. Attention was never meant to substitute respect. Empowerment without accountability was never meant to last. And now the cracks are everywhere. Men are quietly opting out, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. They're choosing solitude over servitude, peace over punishment, authentic connection over emotional taxation. And women are noticing, not all, but enough to panic. The ones who built their identity around control feel that control slipping. The ones who used shame as leverage find their words don't sting anymore. The ones who measured worth in followers and validation now find both fading fast. Because the truth is brutal but simple. The performance doesn't work once the audience understands the trick. The modern man has become fluent in emotional pattern recognition. He can see the difference between femininity and manipulation, between vulnerability and performance, between love and leverage. He's not angry anymore, he's detached. And that detachment is what terrifies the modern woman the most. Because for the first time in history, men are no longer begging to be chosen. They're choosing themselves. And nothing dismantles illusion faster than the loss of an audience that used to worship it. The curtain is falling. The applause has stopped. And what's left standing on that empty stage isn't empowerment. It's exposure. The truth is no longer whispered in private circles of men. It's visible. In the posts, the videos, the contradictions, the quiet desperation hiding behind the hashtags. The illusion of control has collapsed, not with rage, but with silence. And in that silence lies freedom. There comes a moment in every era when the illusion finally breaks. Not with fire, not with fury, but with quiet understanding. That moment is now. For generations, Men were told that their worth was measured by how much they could give, how much they could endure, how much pain they could absorb without complaint. They were raised to fix, to provide, to protect, even from the very people who kept wounding them. But something shifted, something irreversible. Men woke up, not in a loud, revolutionary way, but in a calm, deliberate silence. The kind that comes after years of being blamed, misunderstood, and used as emotional punching bags for problems they didn't create. The silence of a man who finally understands that his empathy was being weaponized. That every "you're not enough" was never about him. That every guilt trip disguised as love was never affection, it was control. That every apology he made for things he didn't do was another brick in the wall of his own prison. And once he saw the pattern, the endless cycle of emotional taxation, he stopped paying. That's the reckoning. The era of emotional labor without reciprocity is over. He no longer feels obligated to fix what he didn't break. He no longer feels guilty for walking away from a woman who refuses to take responsibility. He no longer sees sacrifice as love. He sees it as self-destruction. And you can feel it everywhere. The shift is seismic. Men are leaving quietly, divorces, relationships, dating apps. They're not announcing it with rage. They're simply done. Done being the emotional janitors of broken people. Done being blamed for centuries of pain they didn't cause. Done apologizing for existing in a system designed to shame them for wanting peace. Because the truth is, peace was never the problem. It was the prize. For too long, men were told that choosing peace was weakness, that walking away was cowardice, that boundaries were cruelty. But what happens when the man who's been endlessly tested finally stops playing the game? Everything collapses, because the game only works if he participates. And he's not playing anymore. He's not chasing validation. He's not trying to prove he's different from the others. He's not auditioning for love that keeps moving the goalposts. He's not rescuing anyone who enjoys drowning. He's building, quietly, purposefully, for himself. And that's what terrifies the modern narrative. A man who doesn't need to be needed. A man who finds meaning outside of approval. A man who chooses solitude over manipulation. He's no longer seduced by chaos dressed as passion. He's no longer aroused by instability disguised as mystery. He's no longer fooled by healing journeys that are just endless loops of blame and projection. He sees clearly now, and clarity is lethal to illusion. Because once a man finds his center, he becomes ungovernable. You can't guilt him. You can't shame him. You can't control him. He no longer lives for validation. He lives for truth. And that truth is setting men free in waves. You see it in the eyes of men who stopped apologizing for having boundaries. You see it in the confidence of men who no longer chase affection that feels like a transaction. You see it in the calm of men who would rather be alone than disrespected. They are not bitter. They are not broken. They are becoming whole. Because the reckoning isn't about revenge. It's about balance. For too long, relationships were emotional debt traps where men paid endlessly in reassurance, attention, and effort just to maintain a connection that was already bleeding. But not anymore. Now, men are investing in themselves, their fitness, their purpose, their businesses, their peace. They're rediscovering what masculinity was always meant to be, not dominance but discipline, not control but clarity, not ego but self-respect. They're no longer trying to fix women who call accountability misogyny. They're no longer auditioning for love from people addicted to chaos. They're no longer trying to rescue anyone who enjoys the pain of their own drama. The reckoning is quiet, but it's everywhere. In the man who stops texting back when manipulation begins. In the man who says no without explanation. In the man who walks away when his peace is no longer respected. Because he finally understands, love without accountability isn't love, it's emotional servitude. And the era of servitude is over. Now, men choose women who add peace, not pain. Support, not sabotage. Growth, not guilt. They no longer fear being alone. They fear losing themselves again. And that fear, that sacred fear of self-betrayal, is what keeps them strong. So to the men who finally stopped paying for someone else's emotional debt, you didn't lose her. You found yourself. You didn't abandon her. You escaped her illusion. And to the women watching this, feeling anger rise, that anger is not hate. It's recognition. Because deep down, you know the truth. The masks are gone. The manipulation doesn't work anymore. And the men who used to carry the burden have put it down for good. This isn't the end of love. It's the rebirth of honesty. Because only when illusion dies can something real finally begin.